Okay. Hey guys. So today I wanted to talk about how to cope with financial stress during the holidays. And as I started thinking about doing this as a topic, I realized that when I was going through the holidays after my breakup, I wasn't concerned about money because I was just like, I didn't give a fuck, and I just was like doing what I needed to do to get by. And so I didn't have like a mental capacity to take on the financial stuff. So I was like, how do I make this more geared towards a single person who's just recently gone through a breakup? And I feel like just calling that out is super important, because what I'm going to talk through today is how I'm going to still talk about financial stress and how you can not only cope with it, but also like manage it tangibly. But at the same time, I think it's super important to just go through this and call it out and talk about it. Is you might not give a fuck at the time. So if you've just recently gone through a breakup, or in the past year, you might be in a space where mentally you're just like, I don't give a fuck. I'm just doing whatever I need to do to get by. But I want to just mention that if you do some of these things, like the bare minimum of these things to cope with financial holiday stress, I think that you'll thank yourself later. And I know that because I've gone through it and I didn't do this. And if I would have, I think that I would have thanked myself later. But I also realized that maybe you don't give a fuck right now, and that's okay. And something else that came up recently that I was thinking about is in my last blog last week, I had mentioned that I mentioned all these things to do when you're going through a breakup during the holidays. And one thing that I left off the list that I wish I wouldn't have was, for myself, I actually went through the breakup and then the holiday following it after, which was Thanksgiving, instead of going home, I literally canceled my flight home and booked a new flight to Utah with two strangers that I didn't know, and went on an adventure. And I highly recommend that because, number one, when I was on that trip, it was one of the first days that I went the entire day without thinking about my ex once, which was huge for me. And you're creating new memories with new people, and that's magical in really great spaces. So if you have the ability to go out with friends and take a trip somewhere for the holidays, that's also a really good idea. Okay, so let's get started. Financial stress is actually just a concept, right? And so when we're coping with it, it's important to do the models. And what you'll do is you put your financial state, so maybe how much money you have in your bank account in the C line, which is your circumstance line, because that's your circumstance. And then you get to think whatever you want to think about it. And so if you're feeling stress, what thought is creating that stress for you? And then by identifying that, you can work through the model. And of course, if you have questions, you can do a free breakthrough session with me around money. It's so much fun. I love it so much. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is become aware of your thoughts, right? So I wanted to walk through a model that it's pretty extreme, but let's just say you only had $20 to spend on gifts. I wanted to show you the difference between what you could be thinking versus what you might be thinking, which is causing your feelings, right? So say you only had $20 to spend on gifts. That's your circumstance. So then you think the thought, I don't have enough money to pay for gifts. When you think that thought, that might cause you to feel stressed. And so when you're stressed, how do you show up? And so maybe you show up by buffering with eating food, or just on social media. You might be even purchasing things without even thinking. So purchasing things mindlessly. And then that results in no money for gifts, right? And so you're proving your thought correct. You're proving that by providing as much evidence as you possibly can around that. So that model is creating, so when you think the thought, I don't have enough money for gifts, that's creating stress in your life and a result that you probably don't want. So let's think of an intentional model that you could have. So an intentional model here, your circumstance stays the same. You still have $20 to spend on gifts. But let's say you want to feel creative rather than feeling stressed. So I put creative in the F line. And when I do that, I think about what thoughts make me feel creative. So maybe it's, I'm really resourceful. Maybe it's, I'm genuinely a creative person. Whatever thought it is that helps you feel creative, that generates that feeling, when you feel creative, how do you show up? You show up by brainstorming, finding different opportunities to either like exchange services or just finding different opportunities to make more money, to be able to have some more resources for gifts, different ideas, looking on Pinterest. So you show up differently when you're feeling creative than when you feel stressed. And that leads to a different result. And so your result is like, I'm really resourceful, or I'm very creative, and you probably have gifts for Christmas. So just by thinking these two different thoughts, you get two very different things in your life, and you feel a different way based off of the same circumstance. So you get to choose how you want to show up, and you get to choose which thought you want to think, which create two very different experiences. So I just wanted to show you how you can become aware of your thoughts. All right, then the next thing is really looking at the process of figuring out, like, being mindful whenever you are purchasing gifts. So for example, say you had $1,000 to spend on gifts this year. You write down exactly how much money you're going to spend on gifts, whether that's $500, $20, $5, thousands of millions of dollars, whatever it is. You put that number down. You then go ahead and write out exactly who you're going to be giving gifts to, and then you associate a dollar amount to each person. How much are you going to spend on each person and why? And then once you've done that, you identify what you're going to purchase for that amount of money. And those two steps might be intertwined, right? Because you're like, oh, I want to buy a vacuum for that person. The vacuum's $200 that she wants or whatever. So then you're going to put $200, but then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to work that in with everyone else. Super simple and straightforward. However, I feel like people like forget this, and we forget that we can do this, and we can be very mindful in the way that we go about finding what we want to buy for people. So I just wanted to outline that very quickly today. I hope everyone has a great day. Love you. Bye.